Ah, wealth. How eagerly it is pursued, how passionately it is defended, yet how little it is understood. For many, it is a means of acquiring comfort, power, or social approval. But let us speak plainly, wealth is none of these things. Wealth is a tool, nothing more, and in the hands of the undisciplined, it can just as easily destroy as it can elevate. Let me guide you, as the Stoics guided emperors, merchants, and citizens alike, toward mastering wealth rather than being mastered by it. First, recognize that wealth is a tool, not a purpose. Let us begin with a simple but often ignored truth. Wealth in itself is neither good nor bad. It is merely a means to an end. The carpenter uses a hammer to build, but he does not worship the hammer. The Stoic, likewise, views wealth as a resource to be managed, not a prize to be coveted. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Seneca. What does it mean to be wealthy? Many believe it means having more than enough, but what is enough? Enough is not a fixed number. It is a state of mind. Those who have learned to curb their desires often find that what they have is sufficient. Those who endlessly pursue more find themselves trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. Ask yourself, what is the purpose of wealth in my life? If your answer is tied to status or indulgence, you will never feel satisfied. But if you see wealth as a tool to secure your needs and support your higher values, you will find peace even with modest means. Practical exercise. Reflect on what enough means to you. Write down your financial goals and assess whether they align with your values or whether they are driven by external pressures. Second, earn money honorably without corruption of character. Wealth obtained through dishonesty is a double-edged sword. It may enrich you materially, but it will impoverish your soul. The Stoics believed that no amount of material gain is worth the cost of virtue. If you must lie, cheat, or exploit to acquire wealth, you are not succeeding. You are failing at life's most important test. Wealth is the slave of the wise man and the master of the fool. Seneca. To earn money honorably is to ensure that your actions align with justice, one of the core Stoic virtues. Justice requires fairness, honesty, and consideration for others. If your gain comes at another's unjust expense, it will weigh on your conscience, even if you try to ignore it. Practical exercise. Before making any financial decision, ask yourself, does this action reflect my values? If someone did this to me, would I consider it just? Third, practice simplicity even when wealth grows. One of the greatest dangers of wealth is its ability to breed dependency. As your income increases, so too do your desires: a larger house, a faster car, more extravagant vacations. But what begins as a reward for hard work can quickly become a prison of expectations and obligations. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor with access to unimaginable riches, practiced simplicity. He wore modest clothing, ate plain meals, and reminded himself daily of life's transient nature. Why? Because he understood that luxury, if unchecked, corrupts the soul. As Seneca once said, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? Practical exercise. Choose a day each month to live simply. Eat basic meals, avoid unnecessary spending, and reflect on what truly brings you contentment. Fourth, use wealth for purpose, not for vanity. There's no virtue in hoarding wealth. nor is there virtue in spending it recklessly. The Stoic teaches balance. Use your wealth to fulfill your responsibilities, support your personal growth, and contribute to the greater good. Beyond that, let your spending reflect your values, not your vanity. Wealth is not an end, but a means to achieve and end the cultivation of virtue and the improvement of life. Epictetus. Consider this: a man who spends his fortune on fleeting pleasures and status symbols may appear wealthy, but he is spiritually impoverished. Another man who uses his wealth to educate his children, support charitable causes, and build a life of purpose is truly rich. Practical exercise. Review your recent expenses. How much of your spending aligns with your values? How much was motivated by social pressure or impulse? Fifth, prepare for loss and uncertainty. Wealth is like the tide, it comes and goes. To believe that financial stability is permanent is to live in a state of illusion. The Stoic, however, does not fear loss, for they have prepared for it mentally and practically. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who fears losing what he has that is truly poor. Seneca. Memento mori. Remember, you are mortal. Just as death is inevitable, so too is the possibility of financial hardship. But hardship does not destroy the Stoic. Why? Because they have trained themselves to be self-sufficient. They save prudently, diversify their sources of income, and invest in knowledge and skills that cannot be taken away. Practical exercise. Create a financial safety net. Build an emergency fund and diversify your investments. But more importantly, practice detachment from material possessions. Sixth, avoid debt as a form of slavery. Debt, if managed irresponsibly, can enslave even the wealthiest individual. It ties you to obligations that limit your freedom and peace of mind. The Stoic does not reject debt outright, but approaches it with caution. Debt is the chain that binds the ambitious to their downfall. Epictetus. Before taking on debt, ask yourself, is this debt necessary? Will it help me build something of value? Or am I borrowing for immediate gratification? If the debt is unavoidable, ensure that its repayment plan does not compromise your long-term goals. Practical exercise. Limit borrowing to investments in growth, such as education or business ventures. Avoid debt for luxury purchases or temporary indulgences. And lastly, leave an ethical legacy. What will your wealth say about you when you are gone? Will it speak of greed, or will it tell the story of a life lived with purpose and generosity? The Stoics teach that our legacy is not measured by the amount of wealth we leave behind, but by the character and wisdom we impart to those who come after us. What we leave behind is not what is engraved in stone, but what is woven into the lives of others. Marcus Aurelius. Teach your children not only how to manage money, but how to respect it. Show them that wealth is a means to live well, not a measure of their worth. Practical exercise. Create a legacy plan that includes both financial and ethical considerations. Write a letter to your future generations explaining the values you hope they will uphold. Final reflection. Wealth is a means, not the goal. Wealth, when managed wisely, can enhance life. But when pursued without purpose, it becomes a burden. The Stoic does not seek to avoid wealth, nor do they cling to it. They view it as they would any tool, useful when needed, but never essential to their identity. When you wake tomorrow, do not ask, how much can I earn today? Ask instead, how can I live virtuously today, with or without wealth? For the one who masters this question has already mastered life. Closing prayer of reflection. May I seek wealth not for its own sake, but for the good it can do. May I earn honestly, spend purposefully, and give generously. And may I find my worth not in the possessions I gather, but in the virtues I embody.